Hey guys, this is Graham. I am an author, illustrator, and truck driver in Oklahoma City. I am trying to get out of the truck full time and into the writing desk full time. You can help me do that by checking out my books on Amazon and watching this channel. Now on to the video. Welcome back to the Midnight Ride / book review of the day. Don't think that I've introduced you to this author. His name is Fenton Wood. I think on last year's Best Of episode, I covered his book Hacking Galileo, but I don't think I dedicated an entire video to just that. I read another book of his just the other day. It was the first in the Yankee Republic series, and the book is called Pirates of the Electromagnetic Airwaves. I knew that there were at least three. There were three when that book came out, and I got it, years ago. It was one of those ebooks that it just took me forever to get around to reading it. And now I see that there are five, and that thankfully he has an omnibus available in Kindle on the Amazon machine. So I grabbed one, and I'm just going to listen to the whole series eventually. But I wanted to kind of touch on Hacking Galileo and Yankee Republic. They are both written in a similar setting with similar elements. I've been a Twitter follower / friend with Fenton Wood for a couple of years, but he's not a guy that I know to any great extent. He's an engineer as far as what I glean from his work, because he's very detailed with electrical stuff and mechanical stuff, especially if it has, anything to do with radios and rockets. Hacking Galileo exists in a genre that I call kids on bikes, where the setting is vaguely like 1960s to 1980s, maybe even up to the 90s. Think of movies like Super 8 or E.T. or shows like Stranger Things, where you got a close-knit group of friends and they get together, usually without adult supervision, and they get into trouble, but not bad trouble. Like, they do inventive things, they do constructive and productive things, and in this case, in the Hacking Galileo book, these kids start messing with radio tower and satellite stuff, and they discover something very, very big out in space, and they want to learn more about it. I've described Hacking Galileo to friends as it's kind of like E.T. meets Forrest Gump, just because there's a bit of like globe trotting to it, and the kids end up crossing paths with significant figures in the 80s. This book takes place in the mid-80s. And they even end up in Kazakhstan for a little while. It's like, well, okay, yeah, But they do some stuff that ticks off the deep state and the intelligence agencies, and it's actually got a little bit of a tragic ending to it. But it's all about these kids that are trying to hijack a satellite to save the world. And they don't think that they'd be able to convince adults that there's actually a problem. So it's about these intelligent teens trying to maneuver their way through governmental and engineering bureaucracies to make something happen that they don't think they could convince anybody else to make happen. Normally, when I read like a YA or a middle grade and the kids all talk like they're 25 and the adults all act like they're 13, like it just drives me up the wall. Like, I used to write YA when I was in my early 20s, and if I wrote it now, like, all the teens would just be completely idiotic, and they would rely on adults to come bail them out from their stupid stuff and save the day, and like they'd be the real heroes of the story, just because my confidence in teenage intelligence is not what it once was. But at least in this book, in Hacking Galileo and in the Pirates book, Fenton is able to provide a plausible path for the kids having the practical knowledge that they do. These are kids that would be completely maxing out their characters in RPGs if they were gamers, but instead they're doing things like that in the real world, maxing out their stats in very practical things. In Hacking Galileo, they're saving the world by hijacking a satellite. In the Yankee Republic book, the Pirates book, things are a little bit different. We're given to understand it's kind of set in a semi-distant future. The United States has been broken up, and our main character, a kid named Philo, he lives in a mountain town that is isolated from the rest of the world. It's hard to climb in and out. Now, I was listening to this book through Speechify, and sometimes it happens where like I'll miss little details here and there just because of the way that the digital voice narrates it. But I didn't quite grab what year it was or what the reasoning was as to why they didn't have a whole lot of commerce with outside towns. There was a federal entity that they were aware of, and the book centers on the kids building a radio station that is against the law, and the feds find out about it and they try to come crack it down. So in addition to all the technical stuff about the kids, like getting the materials that they need to build the station and what they broadcast on it, as well as evading the feds that are trying to find it, I missed things here and there, and that's why I'm going to reread the first one when I just listen to the omnibus all the way through. But it was, man, it was so engaging. Like the technical details, they all made sense to the extent that I'm aware of how any of that stuff works, like radio circuits and waves and whatever. Like the way that he said it is like, okay, I believe that he knows what he's talking about, even if I don't. It made me want to learn and understand it all a lot better. And there's also a bit of like, hey, resist the government, move outside the system. That makes for a very entertaining read. If I remember right, the Mammon anthology that Rob Cruzy put together, I've got a short story in there called Double Cross. Fenton's got a story in there too. And I'm not at all surprised that Rob would invite Fenton to come in and write a story in a world that's very heavily reliant on competent engineering as a storytelling element. I think he also invited Travis Corcoran. I can't remember if Travis ended up having time to write a story in there. My story was just about a regular blue-collar trucker guy who got caught up in a scheme. It was more about like the greed and stuff that goes on during the Mammon trilogy. But Fenton is just that kind of guy. He can write these incredible technical details, and he mixes it with whimsical, up to good, no good teenage kids that are doing something really, really cool for a really cool reason. The way that this first book ends, the pirate book, Philo ends up escaping his mountain town and kind of going on the run, and he crosses paths with an Indian boy, and you're given to understand that with the breakup of the United States, there was a war, and a whole bunch of the surviving Americans, the whites, they went back to Europe, or they isolated themselves off in those mountain towns, and the Indians are slowly like retaking pockets of the continent. They're not hostile to the whites or anything like that, but it's like, hey, we've got this line, you've got that line, and there's an element of that there. I'm curious to see where he's going, and then you find out there's an artifact at the end. Philo's learning about what the world was like before his mountain town was created, and there are old coins and stuff, and he sees like Lincoln's face on one of them. So like without outright saying like, oh, his name was Abraham Lincoln, it's like, they describe it, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a penny with Lincoln's face on it. This is the first book in what promises to be a broadly developed series. Hacking Galileo is a standalone, so you can just pick that one up, read it, love it, put it down, and you'll have a great idea of what to expect from Fenton's writing. And that's why I'm excited to finally dig into the rest of these Yankee Republic books, because I want more of that feeling. I want to learn technical stuff while I'm also following cool characters along on a journey of creativity and productivity and exploration of cool ideas. There's a plot to tie it all together, and so far that plot was stronger and tighter in Hacking Galileo, but again, that's because it was a standalone. With a series, I think Fenton's going to have a lot more room to wiggle around and have some fun. And I'm excited to see what he ends up putting on canvas when he's got a bigger frame to work with. So check out Hacking Galileo and Pirates of the Electromagnetic Airwaves. I heartily endorse both of these books. I gave Pirates 4 stars and Hacking 5 stars, and I'll let you know how the rest of the series goes once I get that whole omnibus read. Hey, thank you for watching that. Did you know that I'm also an author? You can check the description for a link to my book, Mr. Friday. It's set in a future where Black Friday is militarized and televised, and the best Friday fighters end up getting sponsors and backing, but it just so happens that the very best of them actually wants to take the holiday down. When he's approached by a couple of other like-minded fighters, he jumps at the chance, and it goes haywire from there. This is a short novella, and it's available in ebook format for just 99 cents. Drive safe. See you out there.